Hello and welcome to 2026. We're back vodcasting here from TeleMedia. I'm Paul Skeldon, the editor-in-chief at TeleMedia, and I'm joined by Anzelle Robertson, our head of strategy. Anzelle, hello, happy new year to you.
Happy New Year to you, Paul. Chinese Year of the Horse. So we're
Indeed
going
it
to
is.
be running
Indeed it
and
is.
winning races.
Absolutely. Well, we thought we'd kick off 2026 in a fairly sort of traditional style by looking at some of the key trends that we're looking forward to and things we think are going to shape where telemedia is going to go this year. So we're going to do that through a series of podcasts about this, each one focusing on a little thing. These are some of the key things we've picked out that we think are going to be important, pivotal, start to emerge in the year ahead. There are probably many others, but these are the ones that I think are sort of probably the most sort of interesting, certainly the ones that are fun to talk about. And we're going to kick off with my favourite topic is traffic generation. Because I think the whole thing sort of lives and dies by where the traffic, and that's changed significantly over the past couple of years, moving from essentially affiliate marketing really being the main way of driving traffic through to Google, and now I think we're increasingly and rapidly seeing even that change. And so the sort of key things I think that are flagged up in terms of traffic generation for the year ahead are social media and a shift in which sites that actually involves. Messaging is becoming increasingly interesting as a traffic generator. And of course, we will touch on, as we have done many times before, AI discovery, because it's not there yet, but it's going to be big, particularly around the news of Google launching its sort of kind of platform for developing agentic commerce solutions. This is marking a big shift. We're going to talk about that in another podcast down the line. But first of all, I'm just going to flag out some of the things we've covered over the Christmas period about social media, first of all, as a traffic generator. It's all been about Google, then it was all starting to be about Instagram and those sort of sites. TikTok is now probably set to be the biggest traffic generator for everything. It's where all the sort of well, it's where the kids are, but increasingly it's also where the adults are as well. And we've
You,
covered sort
you,
of yeah, go on.
you're quite right, Paul. So it's perfect timing this podcast because I just had a conversation in the week of well in this week with Christopher Hensler of Mesh Ads, and he echoes the fact that, where content providers and advertisers in the past, yes, everyone was heavily reliant on direct media buying. They were heavily reliant on Google. And of course, a host of Google issues, most notably suspensions that appeared to be ad hoc, that appeared to be arbitrary almost. Kept CPs, kept advertisers having to pause campaigns, restart, pause campaigns, restart. And of course, every time they did that, the CPA shot through the roof. Now, I think for the longest time, end of 2024, most of last year, the approach was let's try and deal with the problem. So let's try and speak to Google. Let's try and make our campaigns such that we try and not circumvent, but try and remain compliant as to prevent these suspensions. And tried as they might, many players in the industry were successful to some degree, but the impact that it had in the DCB business was still, significant.
Mm,
And I think the main shift now, since we're talking about shifts and talking about trends, is yes, we have booked some success with working with Google, working with our Google account managers, with policy, the policy department at Google, to try and fix the problem. But the trend now is let's look elsewhere
mm.
because it's not something that's entirely going to go away. And I think that's what's seeing, at least within the telemedia industry, or what's driving rather this understanding or urgency almost around we need to start getting TikTok campaigns out there. We need to
Mm.
start getting YouTube campaigns out there. I read this week in the FT that in America the average person spends more time on the actual television in their home watching YouTube uh,
Mm.
than they do
Yeah.
watching, terrestrial or whatever satellite TV.
Mm.
So that's definitely it's definitely true.
Yes, absolutely. I think it is driven by these multiple factors. There's this cost issue around Google. I think there's also, as you say, it's just where people are now. They're on TikTok and YouTube predominantly, and the other
Yeah.
social platforms. And I think the way people look for stuff has changed. They are looking now through those sites to find what it is that they're after. And I guess that, that's where telemedia companies need to effectively sort of market their services because that's where the eyeballs are. As to what the cost is, that's also going to be something I think we might see shift and change as it becomes more popular. So that's going to be an issue, I think, further down the line in 2026 is the sort of cost of acquisition through social media platforms. There's also this issue that in Australia, and now there's talk of it here in the UK about banning social media access for under 16s, um, which I mean, it's yet to be seen what happens in Australia. It only came into force, I think, on the 10th of December. But I think it's interesting to have that at the back of mind as well, that perhaps there could be
Correct,
a problem there.
correct, Paul. But at the same time, and speaking only with a narrow view on South Africa and sub-Saharan Africa, but local codes of conduct actually restrict or prevent or explicitly say thou
Mm,
shalt not market mobile value added services or subscription services to minors.
sure.
So whilst in reality you shouldn't be marketing it to them, in practice, of course, yes, there are 16-year-olds subscribing to
Mm,
telemedia services, but on paper at least, it shouldn't be 16 years anyway. It
no.
should be adult.
No, absolutely, but I suspect it ends up on there and they'll see it. That's the thing. So yeah, so I think that's again something else that sort of isn't going to make this plain sailing, but again, that's what makes this sort of interesting to watch, I think.
Sure, 100%. And I think on the TikTok point, we don't want to be making any promises just yet, but it's definitely worth saying that Telemedia Dubai is, of course, only a couple of months away. That taking place the end of April, 26th to 28th. And again, because this is trendy, because this is so topical, because this is something that content providers, master aggregators, advertisers, anyone with a vested interest in acquiring a subscriber, because everyone's talking about this, we will be reaching out to Google to see whether they can have some sort of a presence at the event. Sorry, to TikTok. To
Mm,
see whether they can have some sort of a presence at the event and tell us a bit more about how advertising on their platform would look specifically for direct carrier build services, which I
mm,
think is a great opportunity for the delegates. In parallel, the guys at Mesh Ads did some great work researching sort of general market overview of the advertising world. And I
mm.
just know that they're going to be definitely showcasing that work at some point in time soon. So I would urge our listeners and our viewers to keep an eye out for that.
Absolutely. So yes, I mean it's a fascinating subject, and I think it's a sort of pivotal one for our industry. Sticking with traffic generation, I've also sort of noticed over the past few months that messaging, so SMS, RCS, well, and obviously OTT ones like WhatsApp, etc., are also becoming traffic drivers. Uh, a lot of this has sort of come to light through how RCS in particular, but SMS as well, is being used to market e-commerce in a broader sense, but applies equally, I think, to the telemedia services. That we've now seen one set of research from I think it was from Juniper Research about how now we're seeing more traffic is being generated to e-commerce sites through messaging than email for the first time ever. And I think we're starting to see now RCS coming into its own as it's ubiquitous across sort of all devices. It obviously offers the richness and the carousels and all that kind of thing, but it's also could be really deeply personal or appear to be deeply personal. Uh,
Exactly. I think the value of that. conversational undertone shouldn't be underestimated, and it's almost the most obvious thing in the world. But if you think about RCS and direct carrier billing, they really were, soulmates from the start, or should be, because what you're doing in an RCS or an RBM exchange is you're speaking to a consumer who, by very nature of that exchange, you already have as MSISDN. And what's the one thing you need to bill such a consumer or to subscribe them is their MSISDN. So you could, if this is done well, do all of that within that conversational experience. So it
Mm,
doesn't surprise me at all, Paul, that you and Juniper, are saying that that's now the main driver of retail and e-commerce. And I believe you interviewed Amelia Newsom Davis of Orange, who
I
said
did.
that, quite right, that they've successfully ran a campaign for an NGO
Mm.
um, uh, to drive donations via RCS using direct carrier billing to collect those donations. And I
Yeah.
think I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting one to watch. I think it's sort of appeared almost out of nowhere, and I think it's interesting to be going back to using messaging because obviously a lot of
Is
telemedia services
technology
came off the back of
cyclical?
SMS years ago. So,
Like fashion? Fashion is cyclical. Is
oh,
technology
absolutely.
cyclical?
I'm back in my flares.
Yeah.
Uh,
I'm
just
wearing my father's Ray-Ban aviators
There you
from
go.
30 years.
The coolest of sunglasses. Um, One last thing I want to just sort of mention again, having mentioned this many times before, but I'm stuck on it, is this AI discovery play. I think that is also going to start to really shape up in 2026. That's going to be something that potentially upsets these other channels because I think we are already seeing consumers looking in a very different way to how they find stuff online, and that is going to impact how they find telemedia services. I think it's worth just throwing that out there one last time because I think
Absolutely.
it's important. It's going to be really important, and I think sort of one thing I read. Was that how websites aren't going to disappear, but they're just really going to be repositories for the data that AI goes and
The,
looks
the
at.
front the front end is going to be your conversation with
Yeah,
your GPT or whoever, and it's just pulling from these back end
yeah,
websites.
yeah,
Uh,
essentially. So that's
I,
something
I
to bear in mind, I think, when
I
you're
get it,
designing.
and I think that the key takeaway for me from our previous conversation about this, which was more in depth, was the APIs are already there. The ability to have your service appear as a result in a ChatGPT conversation, it's already there. So when we last discussed it, we almost ended with a sort of open invitation to CPs, to advertisers, to go, who's going to do it? Who's going to try and
Mm.
this and see what they can do.
Yeah, I'd be interested. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to all of our events across this year because I think we're going to hear the beginnings of people talking about how they've tried aspects of this and how it's worked. It'll be interesting to see how that actually plays out in the real
Yeah.
world. One thing, just to loop it all back together, there was a survey out by Infobip at the end of last year that thinks that AI driven agentic commerce is going to be an even bigger boon for RCS messaging because the whole thing sort of works together so beautifully that you
Yeah.
get this personalized agentic model for shopping and finding stuff. So again, knits it all together very nicely. So that I think is trend number one for 2026 is trends in traffic generation. Look forward to hearing more about them at our events in Barcelona, Dubai, Johannesburg, and indeed Marbella across the year. So thank you, Ansel, for joining us to talk about those things. And I'll see you again very soon to talk about the rest of the trends we've identified across 2026. Everyone watching, thank you very much. And we'll see you again soon.